A bitter Democratic primary race for New York City mayor is almost over. Andrew Cuomo is here to talk about it. The Point starts right now. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo has a long resume of public service and accomplishments that he says make him the best person to run the city. But I want to start out by talking about something else. A man that you may remember, Mario Cuomo, said that you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. There hasn't been a lot of poetry in this campaign, a lot of bitter charges, a lot of nastiness. I'm wondering, if you get elected, how will you bring the city together?
Yeah, that's... You're right. That was one of his favorite expressions. It was also his own expression, by the way.
I know.
People have now copied it. But, you know, when you think about it, Marcia, not just in this campaign, but a lot of past campaigns, there's very little aspirational, positive, visionary talk in a campaign. That's what he meant when campaigns are about poetry. It was about the aspiration, what we can be at our best. Campaigns now are so nasty, they're so negative, almost from the start. But your point is very right. One of the things that concerns me most about this city is the divisiveness.
So how can you bring them together?
Well, the way we've been able to survive for decades, right? Yes, we have a very diverse society, but we're very proud of it, and we celebrate that diversity, its tolerance, its understanding, and it is a collective resolve that says we are not going to allow discrimination or abuse of anyone. So whether it's anti-Semitism today, or anti-Asian or racial unrest. No, we don't tolerate that. We are united. You know, the best expression, e pluribus unum, the founding motto for the country, out of many one. And we live that in New York.
So
otherwise we don't survive.
So would you have to change the rhetoric as mayor to bring people together?
Yes. Yes, you have to change the rhetoric, you have to change the behavior, you have to change the tolerance level. We want to have a discussion about Palestine? Great. You want to have a discussion about whatever international issue or domestic policy issue or defund the police? Fine. But we can do this in a positive, constructive way and not a negative, destructive way. And when you start to pull at the cords of our community, anti-Semitism, etc., that's frightening. That's frightening.
So, you know, if you take a look at what's been happening around the country over the last year or so, I mean, we have the violence in Minnesota where two lawmakers were killed. Lee Zeldin was attacked when he ran for governor. Donald Trump was attacked when he ran for president. I wonder, does rhetoric bring violence, and what role do public officials have in trying to stop that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. You know, hate is easier to generate than love.
Yes.
And it's easier to run a negative campaign pitting one against the other than it is to talk about how do we unify. And more you're seeing the negativity and pitting one against the other. President Trump, immigration, what's that all about? That's all about riling up people who are unhappy with their circumstance and their economic outlook and giving them an enemy. And great, now I have a target. Now I can focus all my anger at this enemy, and Trump is going to resolve that anger. He is very good at doing that. It's a negative situation for the country, but he is very good at fomenting hate. And that's why when Democrats do it in a Democratic primary, in some ways we're playing into Trump's hands because hate begets hate.
But were you forced to be into a negative campaign because everybody else was doing it?
Oh, no, I have tried to stay, I've done my darndest to stay away from any of it. I mean, I will call out anti-Semitism or any hateful speech, but I'm here to talk about how to fix the city, because that's what this is really all about, right? This is not a foreign policy discussion about Palestine versus Israel. We're supposed to be talking about how do we build affordable housing, how do we keep the city safe, how do we rehire 5,000 police when they're quitting at record levels, how do we get the homeless, mentally ill off the streets, and who is best qualified to do that job, right? This is a job interview, right? The people of New York are going to hire a mayor. So let's have that job interview. What are your qualifications? What are your experiences?
Job interview this. So at the end of 4 years, if you were to become mayor, how would the city be different under an Andrew Cuomo administration?
A really tough critic after 4 years. Let's think of a really tough critic. Let's say you, for example. Success would be if you said after 4 years, wow, he made a difference. Crime is down, people feel safer, they have more confidence in the city. Homeless, mentally ill are out of the subways, they're off the streets. That's demonstrable. Businesses are coming back, people are coming back into the city. That would be success.
Except that when Eric Adams ran 4 years ago, he said the same thing, and we're not there. So, you know, some people say politicians promise it, but we don't get there.
And that's the crux of it.
It is.
Politicians promise and politicians do nothing. My grandfather used to go like this when the politicians were
so how are
on
you different?
TV.
How are you different?
Because you can look at my record, which you have for many years, and I deliver. I produce. See, for me, the game is the exact opposite. I don't promise anything that I don't believe I can produce. When I said I'm going to build the 2nd Avenue subway, I built it. When I said I'm going to do a new Kosciuszko Bridge, Kosciuszko is actually the proper pronunciation, although no New Yorker actually, they'll call it the Kosciuszko. The new Tappan Zee Bridge, bringing it down taxes for the middle class, raising the minimum wage, passing the first marriage equality in the United States for any big state. When I say, I am going to do something, I actually do it. And that's purposeful, Marcia, because I want people to say, you know what? This is a government we can trust. And this is a government that is actually competent, that when it says it's going to do something, it does it. I say I'm going to build a new LaGuardia airport after them talking about it for 40 years. In 4 years, there's a new airport. And I think that has a bigger effect on people. I think they go through the airport and they say, wow, look at this. Government actually worked, and maybe New York does have a future.
So you've been in public life a long time, and people think they know you, but I spoke to a good friend of yours, and I said, is Andrew Cuomo different, the one you know, in private than he is in public? And he said, yes. And I said, give me 3 words to describe Andrew Cuomo in private. And he goes, committed, thoughtful, and charming. So I want to ask you, what 3 words would you use to describe yourself in private?
I'll take his words. They're not so bad. Look, I think I am fundamentally the same. Obviously, you have to, everyone says, oh, be yourself when you're in public. Be yourself, you know. Yeah, but you know.
Don't you reserve a part of yourself for yourself?
Well, you have to be careful because, you know, you make one offhanded comment in public, which is a joke, or you meant it lightheartedly. You know the press better than I. They jump on that and they seize on. So you have to be careful.
So one of the things that people have gone after you for are the people who died in nursing homes. But one of the things that I've thought about as I watched you through all of those nursing home hearings is that I can't imagine what it must have been like for you to be the governor of the state that had patient 0 of a disease we knew nothing about. You got no help from Washington. You had to do it all from scratch. And I wonder, Andrew Cuomo, the person, was that a terrifying time? I mean, did you pace the mansion back and forth? What am I going to do? What was it like for you as a person to have to make those decisions that affected the entire state?
You know, Marcia, I don't know that I've even fully recovered from that period of time. It was so frightening. It was so traumatic. You know, we live with this belief that there's someone somewhere who knows what they're doing, right? Someone has an answer if you can just get the right person on the phone. This was a situation where we had the highest infection rate on the globe. I'm talking to the best medical minds on the globe.
But nobody knew anything about it.
And nobody knew anything.
So what were you like inside when you had to deal with that?
It was, obviously, I was frightened. People were talking about millions of deaths. But what I tried to do was focus on the job, right? We're all frightened at times in our lives, and that's normal and that's natural, but don't let the fear control you, right? Is what I said to my kids. Oh, there was fear. There was fear. I would sit in these briefings, and they would say millions are going to die. And then even what we had to do was so impossible. Test 18 million New Yorkers for the... How do you start to test 18 million New Yorkers? We don't have that.
There weren't even tests.
There were no tests. It had never been done before. Why would a New Yorker subject themselves to a test that they didn't even know what the credibility was? How do you implement that, you know? So every day it was just another impossible challenge after another impossible challenge.
Could you sleep?
But there was no time to sleep because the numbers for the next day would start to come in at midnight. So you would start to know the death total, et cetera. And then we would start the same thing all over again. But I'll tell you the silver lining. And I didn't really fully appreciate this at the time. But New Yorkers, we can be tough and we can be gritty and we can fight, but New Yorkers were extraordinary. I mean, they came together in a way, Marcia, they could not have done anything better. And think about this. If any one group said, I'm scared, I'm sitting out, it would have been over. If the NYPD said, I'm not coming to work. If the nurses said, I don't have the PPE, I'm not showing up. If the utility workers said, I'm not showing up. If any one of those pieces fell out, the entire system would have collapsed because we were right on the brink of chaos for months, and no one gave up. No one gave up on each other. And there was a solidarity that was really beautiful at the end of the day, right? I'm asking people to do all these things that I could not possibly enforce. Close your business. You have no authority to tell me to close my business. Wear a mask, social distance. And they did it out of commitment to each other, which was really, and I hold on to that because if we can do that, oh, we can do anything.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there for now, but we're going to be right back with Andrew Cuomo. I'm back with Andrew Cuomo. You know, during the campaign, everybody talks about mistakes. And one of the things that you talked about was there must have been a mistake in how we unleashed e-bikes on the streets of New York. And I wonder, you know, if you could do it differently, what would you do? And if you were mayor, what would you do? Because I think everybody in New York now, whether they are concerned about the environment or not, has had an experience with trying to narrowly missing getting running over by an e-bike. I myself have had one just this week. So I'm wondering about that. What would you do?
Yeah, it is a very serious matter because you're right. People have been seriously hurt. If I had to do it all over again, Monday morning quarterback, We passed it on the state level. We left it up to the localities to regulate.
So now do you have to do something different in New York City if you get elected mayor?
Well, the thought at the time was, because, you know, Buffalo is one reality, Rochester is one reality, New York City is one reality. New York City has not effectively regulated the e-bikes. Surprise, surprise, it's a political issue. And what's happening now in New York City is political gridlock on everything.
So should they have license plates on them so that if they do something bad, police can ticket them?
The deliveristas, first of all, are the people who are trying to make a living. They have to be protected and their rights have to be protected. But these apps are making billions of dollars. And I want to make the apps responsible for licensing the bikes. And so there can be law enforcement.
So we're talking about license plates.
I would license the bikes and to the app and let the app be responsible for the tickets. And then if there's a bike and operator that has a high number of tickets and violations, that is on the app. And there have to be rules, Marcia, that are enforced. You know, we don't enforce any rules in New York. It's like chaos, you know, because it's not just about to make rules. You know, they talk all day long about, I propose this rule. Forget proposing a rule. If you're not going to enforce anything, then it doesn't matter what you propose, right? There's a speed limit. The poor people on city bikes, those city bikes can only go about 18 miles an hour. They have e-bikes that are doing 30, 35 miles an hour going past them, right? So we need rules enforced. You can't be on the sidewalk and on the street and going against traffic. And that's part of the feel of the chaos that is out there.
We have about a minute left in this section. I need to ask you this. Much has been made about the fact of who would best stand up to President Trump. I would like to ask you, if you were mayor, what do you think you could work with Trump to help New York City? Not the negative stuff, the positive stuff.
That's going to depend on him, right? Now, I know I've dealt with President Trump. I think he has a respect for me and for New York. I think that's important. I don't think he wants to pick a fight that he can't handle. And he knows when he fights with New York, it gets very difficult very quickly, because it has. We had a number of fights during COVID, etc. On the flip side, there were situations where I went to him and I asked for help. I asked for help to rebuild the train tunnels going across the Hudson River, etc. I think there are infrastructure projects that he could help with if he was interested. So if he is interested, yes, there's a lot that he can do. The first order of business is do no harm. And I'm afraid of what he's going to do with the budget. I'm afraid of what he's going to do with immigrants, because that is working for him politically. And by the way, it's the only thing that's working for him politically. And right now he has the keys to the city because Adams handed him the keys to the city, and we have to get them back.
And on that note, we have to leave it right there for now, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Thank you for joining me. Since this is the last show before Election Day, I spoke with New Yorkers about what they're looking for in the next mayor. They're weighing in on your point. Are you planning to vote in the mayor's race?
I always vote.
I don't want to get involved.
I'm not sure at this point.
Why not?
I don't know. I haven't made my mind yet.
Oh, no, ma'am.
How come?
Couldn't get caught up in the politics.
I don't think so.
How come?
Well, I don't know what the options are.
I think it's important. We'd like to know who's going to run our city.
Why? Because we need to get rid of Eric Adams. It's time. This city needs a change. There's too much crime.
I'm not pleased with the current situation, so I would like it to change.
So we need to vote. Everybody need to vote for change. What we've been having is not the greatest.
Are you planning to vote in the mayor's race?
Sure.
Why?
Probably my wife is going to make me.
That's the best answer today. What are you looking for in the candidate for mayor?
Oh, someone will make this city safe.
Keep the city safe and clean.
Somebody who is going to fix public transit.
Experience and clarity.
Somebody who's not a criminal. One who's good administrative abilities. And a lot of the candidates there don't have that right now.
Somebody with good policies, good jobs, good things, you know, helping the people. That's what it's all about.
I'm looking for someone who's honest, has integrity.
Yeah, somebody who can just make things better for us.
I'm looking for someone that I can trust, someone that I think has the best interest of the city.
Oh, Lord, I don't know. I'm just a Democrat.
Anybody but Adams.
How come?
It's a pretty easy question to answer.
Whatever my wife is looking for. Love you, honey.
Who do you think would be the best person to run the city?
Cuomo.
I believe Cuomo, yeah.
Because he has experience running the state. He pulled us through the pandemic. He's a competent man.
I don't know them different, so I really don't.
Okay.
Yeah, but Democrat. I live in Brooklyn.
Mr. Lander.
Because?
Because I think he has integrity and the city needs a change.
Personal bias aside, I can say anybody but Cuomo.
Cuomo was good, but he had so many allegations. Eric Adams, I don't see what he did for us. You understand? And he's everywhere, but in New York to help us. To me, that's the way I feel.
Probably not any of the major candidates. Sadly enough to say.
Why?
I don't know how politics in New York got this way, but it seems to attract the kind of people who may not be running the city to the best.